Jesus could have made wine in so many different ways. A never-ending jar of wine, cups that didn't need refilled. Poof, more wine! Instead, he involves people. If you want a miracle, make sure you're involving the people around you. Well, welcome to this week's episode of the Fresh Church Podcast. Hi, I'm Pastor Tony, and today I want to give you a fresh perspective on one of the miracles of Jesus, one that most people are familiar with, but I promise that you'll see something different in this experience that will change the way you do ministry. We're going to be talking about Jesus turning the water into wine at the wedding reception. Are you ready? Well, let me ask you as we work through this experience, who's the key person or persons who cause this miracle to occur? Is Jesus really who the story is about? How can I apply truths from this experience without having to physically turn water into wine? So I'm finishing up my master's, and this past semester, I took a course on the book of John. Now, when you attend college, you notice that every professor has their own way of doing things. Some you learn a lot from, some you just wonder how they got the job. Well, our professor in this course taught through the gospel a little different than I expected. One of the things he required was that we read weekly from a commentary on specific chapters. And then he had us reading from different commentaries so we could see different perspectives and realize that not all commentaries are the same. While reading through one of these commentaries, I ran across a quote that forever changed my perspective on the story of Jesus' first miracle. But before we go there, let me walk you through the experience. I want to read directly from John 2 from the New Living Translation. It says, "The next day there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. The wine supply ran out during the festivities. So Jesus' mother told him, 'They have no more wine.' Verse 4, 'Dear woman, that's not our problem,' Jesus replied. 'My time has not yet come.' But his mother told the servants, 'Do whatever he tells you.' Standing nearby were 6 stone water jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing. Each could hold 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told the servants, 'Fill the jars with water.' When the jars had been filled, he said, 'Now dip some out and take it to the master of the ceremonies.' So the servants followed his instructions. When the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from, though of course the servants knew, he called the bridegroom over." Verse 10, "A host always serves the best wine first," he said. "Then when everyone has had a lot to drink, he brings out the less expensive wine. But you have kept the best until now." This miraculous sign at Cana in Galilee was the first time Jesus revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now, I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories, whether that's a family vacation, a childhood experience, or a story from the Bible. I love telling stories. When I was a youth pastor, kids pastor, family pastor, if you had me come preach at your church this Sunday, I'm going to tell stories. Why? Because the Bible isn't a long list of rules and moral codes. It provides us with real-life people in real circumstances, the way they interacted with a real God who keeps his promises. And the Gospel of John is filled with stories with specific names and people and specific elements that are not always covered in the other Gospels. So, for example, the feeding of the 5,000 is found in all 4 Gospels, but only John mentions the disciples by name and the little boy who provided the loaves and fishes. And he even gives specifics on what kind of loaves and fish that they were. It's all the little specifics that I love. When I dig into one of these stories, there's something more that I can learn. Being 2,000 years removed in a completely different culture, the answer is yes. So let's get ready to learn. Now, some of this you may know, some of it might be vaguely aware of, and some that's going to blow your mind. This is the story of Jesus performing his first miracle. No, wait. This is the story of Jesus obeying his mommy. No, wait. This is a story of a wedding feast that could have went horribly bad. Wait. This is the story of when the disciples truly believed Jesus was who he said he was. No, This is really the story of the obedient servants. What? So let me set you up with a couple of historical facts. Okay, keeping in mind that those listening to this podcast come from a variety of spiritual backgrounds. Some of you were raised in church, some not. Some have formal education, some don't. Some know their Bibles thoroughly, and some of you are still trying to find where the book of John is in your Bibles, right? That's okay. Jesus picked 12 very different individuals to be his disciples, and he picked you too. So let's start with the scene. We're in the city of Cana in Galilee. This is one of a collection of smaller towns in the northern area of Israel. In the south was a region known as Judea, and they had cities like Jerusalem and Bethany and Jericho and Bethlehem. And then there was a region in the middle known as Samaria, and the Jews hated that area. Then north of there and to the west of the Sea of Galilee was an area known simply as Galilee. Many of Jesus' initial ministry teachings and miracles are performed in this area. You might recognize towns like Nazareth, Capernaum, Bethsaida. Well, this is where we find the village of Cana. A couple have gotten married, and per tradition, they held a feast that could last 5 to 7 days where they've invited friends and family and people of influence in the community. It was a joyous celebration, but it was also quite expensive for the families. It would have been dishonorable to have run out of food or wine. Keep in mind, this wine had a very low level of alcohol, so it's not a drunken party all week long. But the tradition was to have your best offered at the beginning and then start to use the generic brands as time went on, if you know what I mean. There's a person in charge of the experience, or a master of ceremonies, or perhaps a wedding planner, who makes sure everything is going okay. There are servants keeping food and drink restocked and cleaning things along the way. And then there are guests enjoying the excitement of this couple celebrating their marriage. Jesus shows up with at least some of his disciples. We know Jesus' mother is there, and while they're there, they run out of wine. Jesus performs a miracle and turns water into wine and surprises everyone. This new wine that he's made is better than any of the previous, and everyone celebrates. But there's so much to this story. And what was that quote that I read in that commentary that changed the whole story for me, right? Well, we're getting there, but I have to ask you this. So is this a story about Mary? I mean, Mary, the mother of Jesus, she must live in the region. She has relatives in the region. She's probably related to the people getting married. She knows that the wine is running out, even though the rest of the crowd doesn't. And she's worried about the reputation of the newly married couple and their families. Perhaps it might even been her reputation on the line. Mary knows who Jesus is. She has pondered all these things in her heart for a lot of years. She knows Jesus is the Messiah, the Savior, the God-child who she bore and raised. She may not understand everything, but she knows who Jesus is. Mary realizes the wine has run out. This will stop all the festivities and lead to embarrassment for everyone involved. There's no more wine and evidently no ability to get more, either from the aspect of cost or supply or availability based on the time of day or location. There's nothing that can be done. We don't know what the thought process looked like, but at some point she grabs her son Jesus and gets him up to date. She's already exhausted her resources. Only the divine intervention of God will save this scenario. She already knows exactly who to turn to. She turns to Jesus. They have no more wine. Jesus, with utmost respect and honor for his mother, simply says in verse 4, "Dear woman, that's not our problem. My time has not yet come." But Mary, his mom, she knows. She turns to the servants, who are very much aware of the situation, and simply tells them, "Do whatever he says." Mary isn't mentioned again. She did her part. What part was that? Oh, hold on, we're getting there. But again, this isn't the story of Mommy Mary. Well, what about the fanfare of Jesus' first miracle? Well, if you remember, Jesus said it wasn't the right time. I mean, one can assume this was not how he would want his first miraculous sign to be, in the shadow of someone else's party with mom telling you what to do. I mean, I understand the providence of this, and that was a plan from the beginning, and that provided opportunity for the disciples to truly believe Jesus was the Messiah. But I think there was more to the story than we've ever noticed before. But before we go there, let's look at the miracle itself. Jesus was presented with a challenge. No more wine. Solve it. There are so many ways he could have performed this miracle. He could have caused the cups to never run dry like happened with Elijah and the widow of Zarephath. He could have used that wine, what wine was left, and refilled it in all the other wine containers like what happened with Elisha and the widow when she was in debt. He could have miraculously spoke wine into existence and it would have suddenly appeared just like he did in creation. Instead, Jesus takes stone jars. Now, these are jars that are used for ceremonial cleaning. For a Jew, you would use ceremonial water for cleaning your feet upon entering a home. You would also use ceremonial water to wash your hands between every food item eaten at a meal. These were large jars containing 20 to 30 gallons of water. The vessels were completely clean, non-porous, and unable to be hiding any Kool-Aid inside. You know what I'm talking about, right? Every kid's church illustration of this is a glass jar with a little Kool-Aid in the bottom that when you pour the water in, miracle, it turned into wine. Just make sure you're careful when you do this, that you remind the kids that Jesus didn't do a trick like you just did. He actually performed a miracle. Jesus literally changed the chemical composition of local well water into the best tasting wine they'd had. His first miracle was transformation. But wait, what did Jesus actually do? He gave a couple simple instructions. Yes, Jesus performed the miracle, but is that what this story is really all about? So listen to what David Guzik wrote in his commentary on the Gospel of John. The servants, under the direction of Jesus, were in a unique place of blessing for this miracle. Jesus wanted the cooperation of men in this miracle. He could have filled the pots himself, or just as easily created the liquid in the pots. But he knew that if the servants shared in the work, then they also shared in the blessing. Did you hear that? He knew that if the servants shared in the work, they would also share in the blessing. This is truly the story of the obedient servants. So let's back up and look at this story again. Okay, let's look at it from the lens of a storyteller. So you and I, we're hired to work at a wedding banquet. We get to do this every so often. I mean, it doesn't pay a lot, but hey, it helps, right? In our job, keep the guests happy. So we refill wine glasses. We bring food to the table. We clean up any messes. We're of assistance. We respond with, my pleasure. Some parties are easy. Some are hard work. We arrive, we try to enjoy ourselves. We crack jokes in the back to keep ourselves amused. We're all watching Uncle Enoch because he tells the best stories about Aunt Ruth when he's had a couple of drinks. Our boss checks on us, but it's pretty much hands off. I mean, I think he's enjoying the wine as much as the guests are. We've made it through the first day of celebration. We're into day 2 and still having fun. Suddenly a new group of guests show up. Were they on the list? We start to notice that we might not have enough supplies to make it throughout the entire event. There's enough food, but the wine is running low. We probably need to let someone know, right? We try to catch the wedding planner, but he's oblivious. He ignores us and says nothing. Then there's this nice lady who keeps coming in and checking on us. I like her. Isn't her name like Mary or something? Something like that. I mean, well, half the women in Galilee are named Mary, evidently. This time she notices the stress on our faces. How are things? I let her know that we're running a little low on wine, that we're going to have to see how it goes. Realizing that things are running low, we reach for our 2 containers we have on reserve. Wait, they're empty. Who used these without telling us? When do we get replacements? What happened to all the wine? What's going to happen to us? And Mary, she hears a commotion and she comes in and we tell her, and we know that she tells the master of ceremony where he's going to fire all of us. What do we do? She slips out. She comes back with a couple of the guests. I recognize one of those guys. I think he was with that group that arrived a little bit ago. And they're talking, and obviously they know each other. I think he might even be her son. Then she looks at me right in the face. Do whatever he tells you. And then she leaves. We look at each other. We look at the man who looks like that guy who's been volunteered to do something really didn't think he wanted to do, but there he is. And he looks at me. Those eyes. I'll never forget those eyes. There's compassion in there. Like he understands exactly all the anxiety and dread that we're feeling. But there's also something else in there, a confidence that everything's going to be okay. Then with authority, like I've never experienced before, not loud or oppressive, but with authority, he says, fill the jars with water. He doesn't have to say anymore. There's an urge inside of all of us to simply do what he says. We grab the 6 jars, we head for the local water supply. They're awkward, a little heavy as they're made of stone, but I had no idea what he intends to do with it, but I'm doing it anyways. So we fill up the jars all the way to the top with no place to add any other ingredients. We place a lid on there to keep the water pure and return it to the party. I wipe the sweat from my brow and I look at this man with expectation. I have no idea what he's planning on doing, but I'm listening. In a gentle voice, he instructs us, now dip some out and take it to the master of the ceremonies. I take off the lid, dip my cup inside, and take it to the master. I almost want to take a little drink myself as I'm tired from carrying those jars. That cool, fresh water is enticing. I hand it to the master of ceremonies. He doesn't even look. He grabs it, takes a huge drink in the revelry of the moment. Suddenly he stops. He looks in the cup. He takes another drink. Then he bursts out in laughter. He pauses only long enough to exclaim, a host always serves the best wine first. Then when everyone's had a lot to drink, he brings out the less expensive stuff. But you have kept the best until now. He turns to me and quickly commands us to refill everyone's cup with this new wine, better wine, and the party continues. I hurry back and we get the group together working full speed. The pitchers are going, the cups are being refilled, the people are happy. And then I realize I don't see the man anymore. The one who gave us the instructions. But I know what's occurred. A miracle. The chatter in the back room is no longer about Uncle Enoch. It's now about this stranger who took some water and saved the day. It's a story of obedient servants. These were the people who were doing their job, their assignment, their task. They were doing what was asked of them. They were given a strange request, but they did it. They were told to present water to the master of the ceremonies, fully aware that they could have been severely disciplined for it, and instead received praise as a miracle occurred. This miracle happened because a group of servants were willing to obey. We don't have any recordings of Jesus praying or speaking over the water. We have the simple obedience of a group of servants. We have the instruction of a woman concerned for the host family. We have some disciples looking on with new belief in the one they follow. And we have a crowd in celebration oblivious to what's happened. So how can we apply this experience to our lives? I think the greatest thing that we can learn from this is simply for the miracle to happen, it involved those servants who were willing to be obedient. Jesus could have done it on his own, but he didn't. Mary could have tried to ignore the issue or figured out something else, but she went to Jesus and turned the responsibility over to the servants. The servants who have the responsibility to serve the wine. In your church, in your ministry, you need obedient servants. They might not seem important to the guests. They might not even be important to the master of the ceremonies. But Jesus is looking for obedient servants. Your ministry needs a Mary who notices what's going on, is aware of who is involved in the situation, and asks for a miracle. We need Jesus. Well, that would seem to stand by itself, Pastor Tony. Let me take it a step farther. We need someone to commission people to do a job. Fill the jars, dip some out, take it to the master. But most importantly, we need people willing to serve in obedience. Are you finding those people within your church? Are you looking for those who are not capable of performing the miracle themselves, but are more than willing to be part of the story? Are you looking for the ones that say, use me, Lord? Well, let's take it up a level. Had you been in the place of Jesus, would you have used the servants or just done it yourself? Well, what if they don't fill them up all the way? What if they spill it, bringing the cup to the master? What if they haven't gone through all the proper processes? What if they mess the whole thing up? What if you don't use them? I have never seen water chemically change into wine in all my years of doing ministry, but I have seen the benefits of a miracle shared with others because I gave them the opportunity to participate. So are you willing to let someone else teach or preach? Are you willing to let someone else write the review questions, create the game, develop the curriculum schedule, oversee the social media page? Jesus knew that if the servants shared in the work, then they also shared in the blessing. Are you willing to share? Hey, this is Pastor Tony reminding you to keep your ministry fresh.